Hello, you are with Dr. Sushma Singh. Today in Unit 9 Dependency Theory of Underdevelopment, we are going to start topic Critics of Dependency Theory. Dependency theories have provided an alternative approach to looking at unilinear growth model. They have critically evaluated the continued unequal relationship between countries which have their history partially in colonialism and imperialism. While the dependency theories have provided a welcome critique from the South about the North, they were not without some shortcomings and critiques. The principal criticism of dependency theory has been that the theorist does not provide any substantive empirical evidences to support its argument. There are few examples that are provided, but many exceptions are there which do not fit in with their core periphery theory, like the newly emerged industrial countries of Southeast Asia. It has also been said that dependency theories are highly abstract and tend to use homogenizing categories such as developed and underdeveloped, which do not fully capture the variations within these categories. Another point of criticism is that the dependency school considers its ties with multinational corporations as detrimental, while one view has been that they are important means of transfer of technology. Another criticism which is leveled against the dependency theory is that they base their argument on received notions such as the nation state, capitalism, and industrialization. Some of the Eurocentric biases are inherited in these theories of dependency school. For example, they assume that industrialization and possession of industrial capital are crucial requisites for economic progress. It has recognized the state as the sole agent of the development. Indeed, there is an inability to think beyond the state as the primary and essential agent of economic development. These theorists again have visualized development in economic terms. The social and cultural dimension of development are conspicuously missing from their argument. A singular criticism which is charged against the dependency theories is that they do not reflect the changes socio-economic and political situation of the contemporary world. While many of the criticisms are justified, what we need to ask ourselves is whether the essential ideas and the ideology behind the dependency theory has any relevance in the present context. Let us discuss this in the next section. The next section is relevance of dependency theory. Increasing globalization, which appears as an inevitable social condition and process, has pointed out to the interconnected nature of the world today. Never has there been so much flow of capital, finances, goods, people, ideas across the geographical territories. Some of these interconnections had been pointed out by the ECLAC in 1950s and by the dependency theories later, including the world system theorists. Both theories view the problems of the underdevelopment and development within a global context as interconnected economic, political, and social processes. Dependency theory forecasts that the world system will tend to concentrate production in the hands of relatively few transnational corporations, making the world as oligopolistic market. From this, the theory also forecast a long trend to slow down the production and to speed up income polarization. The economic divide and income gap between industrialized countries and developing countries has widened continually. The polarization between the North and South is more pronounced than ever. The United Nations Human Development Report shows that the share of world trade for 48 least developed nations, representing 10% of the world population, has halved in the past 2 decades. There is a widening gap between the rich and poor, as these figures show. The share in the global income of the poorest 20% of the world's people has fallen from 2.3% in 1960 and 1.4% in 1991 to a current level of 1.1%, while the ratio of the income of the top 20% to that of the poorest 20% rose from 30:1 in 1960 and 60:1 in 1991, and grew still further to a figure of 78:1 in 1994. In other words, the rich are getting richer while the poor are getting poorer. These trends show no sign of slowing down, even though the United Nations estimates in Human Development Report that it will take only 1% of the global income and around 2 to 3% of the national income in all but the most impoverished countries to fund a program to eliminate world poverty. These figures call attention to the fact that these growing disparities between people and nations have to be accounted for and analyzed. It is a fact that we live in an interconnected world. There is a reason to examine the dependency theory for their rationale, though on the face of it, they do not seem to be reflecting contemporary circumstances and situations, and some of their formulations have been questioned. However, in the face of the growing interconnected economies and political economy, it is worthwhile to critically evaluate these theories. Apart from all of its methodological and definitional deficiency, dependency theory has been empirically undermined by the recent historical experience of many less developed countries. Economies alone cannot count for many of the factors that restrict economic and social progress. In the final analysis, the study of underdevelopment is incomplete if we see the world through the economic lenses alone. A reference to the political economic dynamics in both domestic and the international arena is necessary. Dependency theory analysis rightly emphasizes the interdependence and economic and political relation in the international arena. If the political economic dynamics it spells out are often mistaken, at least it gets the frame of reference right. After 50 years of development experience since the discipline of development economics was born, scholars are increasingly coming to terms with the reality that underdevelopment is the result of a bewildering array of factors: economic, political, social, cultural, etc. We can say retrospectively that the dependency movement was simply too intellectually ambitious in seeking to account for underdevelopment with a general theory of political economy. As one of the pioneers of development theory, Albert Hinzman wrote 30 years ago, the attempt to produce general statements about the relationship between the politics and economics is likely to produce only penalty and frustration. For relationship at this level are either evident or and hence uninteresting, or are so complex that dependent on so many other variables as to be unpredictable and inconclusive. It would be difficult to phrase more distinctly that has loomed dependency theory to the dustbin of history. Globalization means that Latin American economies are subjected to the discipline of international financial markets as well as the threat of exit by local and international investors. Dependency theorists would predictably use this insight to validate their thinking by asserting that global economic integration restricts the room for maneuver of many governments in matter fiscal and monetary. While this is undeniable, reduced freedom of policy action is not necessarily deleterious for development. In fact, many economists assert that the new discipline imposes on developing nations by international markets has weeded out the worst example of irresponsible populist policies of time past by tying politician hands. The international economic scene is quite different from the one extant when dependency tenets were first being formed in 1950s and 1960s. But again, it is up to the Latin American governments to take advantage of the new opportunities and to limit the new risks that come with this new world economic landscapes. Their policies give them some leverage so as to extend to some they want to control their individual economic destiny. That is the good news. Dependency theory in a more pessimistic fashion did not allow for that possibility. Now let us conclude the unit now. Dependency theory stands as a critique to the mainstream theory of development. This theory has been accepted and rejected by several scholars in view of various social and political dynamics of the society concerned. In the unit, we have presented briefly outline of this theorem. We started this unit by describing the origin of this theory and its further expansion initiated by the Frank and Waldstein. The perspective on the core and periphery and world system extra are widely debated. We have delineated the essential features of the dependency theory and have placed criticism of this theory. In social science, every social theory is having its relevance in particular context. We have also presented a view on the relevance of this theory in the contemporary world. Our attempt, however, have not been to give conclusion but to leave a space to develop a critique of this theory in a context of globalization and various other development. Here we want to close this lecture as well as unit. Thanks for listening.